Yo guys, I'm back. Uh, it's Sunday and I just got done doing a bit of work. Yeah, I was working a bit on Sunday just because I'm behind on some stuff. But I had a cup of coffee and did some work, and then I got some energy and thought, hey, why don't I spend my remaining energy for today to make a video? And yeah, so I made another coffee in Tilda's Moment cup, and I thought I would just do a bit of practice against hand traps. Really, it's like nothing super special, just doing a bit of test hands. And I had this idea where I put out all these hand traps that I think are pretty relevant, and then I would put them in a pile and shuffle them, and then just draw 2 cards, and then that would be the hand traps that I am trying to play through. So not, triple hand traps stuff or quadruple hand traps, just 2, but some of the more high impact ones like Nibiru, Drawl, and some more Charmies and stuff. So yeah. So that was what I was thinking today, and I wanted to do a tiny little twist, because for a while now I have been wanting to do a video on one-offs, which, in White Forest there's a lot of single copy cards you can play, like, because there is a bunch of different Sinful Spoils cards and some, White Forest cards and some Asmina cards that are one-off. And I thought I would try, and I'm pretty sure I will not be playing those in the main deck, because I think that I'm pretty set for 1 copy of Woes and 1 copy of the Fusion Spell, and also 1 copy of Hallowed, 1 copy of Deception, of course, but I don't really count those as one-offs, in the sense that you're probably gonna play those in every deck. But it's a bit more interchangeable which one of the sort of other one-offs you play. And I'm choosing to play the Fusion Spell and Woes. I have seen a lot of lists now, and I think some lists are not playing the Fusion Spell, and those are mostly the Fiendsmith ones, not the pure ones, just because sometimes you don't want to use the extra deck space for a Guardian Chimera. I think that's the reason. And when you're playing Fiendsmith cards, you'd rather have some other cards instead. And then most people are not playing the Saint Asamina. So of course, if you don't play that, then the Fusion Spell becomes less desirable. But if you do play it, the Fusion Spell suddenly becomes a lot better, and I'm playing it. I don't know if it's the best version, or I'm pretty sure actually that it's not the best version, but it's the one that I like the most. And I think that Saint Asamina has some nice upsides. But yeah, so and that's the Fusion Spell, and then I'm playing a copy of Woes, and I know that a lot of people are choosing to play a copy of APs instead of Woes. Sometimes they just play APs instead of Woes. Sometimes they play both APs and Woes. I think that APs is a super powerful spell, trap card. Definitely don't think it's a weak trap card. I think it's more powerful than Woes when you get to play, but it also has a much lower floor. So if you get really stopped really hard, then the apes is sometimes only a compulse for 1, which is, not as good as the Woes in those situations, because what the Woes does is that it's often either gives you a book or it gives you your dispel, right, depending on how far you got on your own turn. And then now with, as Mina said, you can summon her from the deck and use her as synchro material, and then you can search a Sinful Spoils, spell a trap, or it just a Sinful Spoils card actually. And that can give you some follow-up. So I play Woes over Apes because in the scenarios where you get stopped really hard, I think that Woes is better because it does almost the same thing, or sometimes better, right? I'd rather have a Book of Eclipse than a compulsory evacuation device. You can maybe argue that the compulsory evacuation device for 2, like bouncing 2 things, is better than a book, but I'd say they're pretty comparable. And then, you know, of course, if you get to 3 or above, then, you know, the APs really is better than the woes. If you go full combo, for example, I heard one person from my locals, she's not playing woes because she says that when she goes full combo, then there's not enough space to actually, you know, summon out a monster with woes and synchro summon because, you know, the full M board is really clogged, and we have seen that a lot. But yeah, my argument is that if you get to that point, you should probably win anyway. But I do think that APs is super strong, and I have it in my side deck. And what I used to play in my side deck is that I would play 1 copy of, like before Supreme Darkness, I'd just play 1 copy of Scourge and 2 extra copies of Woes, so that when I went first, I'd go up to 3 copies of Woes in my deck and 1 copy of Scourge. And that's because hard drawing Woes is actually really good. Like, this is all sort of playing from the assumption that you'll probably get stopped a lot post-siding. Like, people will side in a bunch of stuff, like Mochamis and Droll and Shifter and what do I know, all sorts of stuff. And maybe just a bunch more hand traps, right? So your chance of getting triple hand trapped is suddenly much higher. And in those cases, it's pretty nice to just hard draw the woes. And I still think that's true. And but then now I sort of chose to run APs over the copy of Scourge, because I think APs is a more powerful card. And even though Scourge is an Omni Negate, the APs is much more likely to give you an extra turn. And yeah, it's crazy to say, but I feel like it's more powerful than the Omni Negate if you actually get to play. Like compulsory evacuation device, like bouncing 4 or 5 cards is really, really strong. And can just end the game on the spot, honestly. So I was playing 1 APs and 2 woes. But then I thought, hey, let's maybe try some other of the one-offs. Like, for example, one spell or trap card that I have had my eye on for a while is the, let me just show you here my side deck, I guess. Let me just pull out these 3 here. Is the Sinful Spoils Omni Negate, this one here. It's called Sinful Spoils of Betrayal, Silvera. And what it does is that you send 1 Diabellstar monster from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard, then target 1 card on the field, negate its effect. And when your opponent activates a card on effect in response to your Diabellstar monster or your Sinful Spoils spell trap card, or their activation, effect activation, you can banish this card from your graveyard, negate the opponent's effect. And you can only use 1 of these ones per turn. I don't know how often the second one will come up, to be honest. It can be used to like stop a hand trap on your Diabellstar or on your Deception. Which is cool, right? Stopping the hand trap on the Deception is actually pretty substantial, but of course it's a bit hard to set up. but it does have applications, I guess, in the grand game. But it's mostly, the first effect, where it's sort of a conditional omni-negate. You're negating a card on the field, and you do also need to have your Diabell Star either in your hand or on the field, and send it to the graveyard. But the reason I was thinking about this card is that sometimes it is actually nice to have a Sinful Spoils trap card, because you do sometimes you are sometimes missing some extra versatility in what you can search with your Diabell Star or your Murcielago or your Asaminal set. And against board breakers, the omni-negate is actually pretty nice, right? Of course, stuff like woes is a lot better against hand traps, but a bunch of people are running board breakers, I feel like. So if you're in a board breaker matchup, having this can be really powerful, especially because you can, like we saw in a lot of combos where you pop your Murcielago with the Moaragina to search a Sinful Spoils spell. You can, in that situation, also pop your Ilia Sylvia to search a Sinful Spoils trap card. And so you can search Wanted and discard, and that will essentially equal an omni-negate on your opponent's turn. The only downside is that you are popping your Ilia Sylvia, which is your Nibiru protection. So you need to be pretty confident that you are not, that your opponent does not have Nibiru. But the thing is that, and I'll probably make a separate video on this, but a lot of the time when we are playing, we are not really setting up the Ilia Sylvia before 5 summons, because that means skipping out on the Murcielago line, and it's also just sometimes not even possible if you only start with White Forest. You have to synchro climb and use the Asamina set as a synchro material in order to even get to your Asamina engine, and at that time you are very likely going to be at 3 or just 5 summons, right? If you use Asamina set to make Rishiela, you will be at 3 summons, and then of course you can set up your Ilia Sylvia as your 4th summon, but that would mean skipping out on the Murcielago. And even if you go for your Murcielago as your 4th summon, you need to immediately shuffle the Asminal set or the Murcielago back into the deck and add back Hollowed in order to go for the Ilia Sylvia on your 5th summon. And if you shuffle back either of those, you are probably not, you are limiting your abilities to make your Saint Asamina on your own turn, because you need your Murcielago as the fusion material, as one of the materials for Saint Asmina, and you also need Asmina set in the graveyard to summon back with Crush Sheep in order to be able to fusion summon. Unless, of course, you go for the line where you use the fusion spell, just hard use the fusion spell. And you can definitely do that if you add the fusion spell of Murcielago. But then you are not adding Wanted of Murcielago. And so that would have meant that you would have gone through Wanted prior to this, or just skip out completely on the Wanted, which is not a good idea. And if you went through Wanted and the Diabell Star prior to this, then you would be on your 5th summon, and they would have a chance to nip you before you summon out the Ilia Sylvia. So you are giving up a bunch of, and that's the most optimal scenario where you use, as Minal said, as synchro material at the earliest possible point, which is probably only really possible if you opened either Asamina LZ or if you opened Sylvie, or both. And most of the cases, if you don't open these cards and a way to play, you will use, as Amina said, as a synchro material to make the bell, because you would search it off of tails after making Rishiela, or search it with Rishiela herself. And so at that point you would be on your 5th summon when the bell hits the field, and then your opponent can just nip your diabell, and you so and you can of course still play if they do nip you, but I just feel like you can prioritize making the Ilia Silvira really quickly, but you lose out on a lot of value, or you can just try to play in a way such that if they have the nip, you can still bounce back and with the value that you have gained. And so my point with that whole tangent, well, it wasn't a tangent, but I guess it felt like one, is that in regards to popping the Ilia Silvira and searching out this trap card, unless your opponent is really not super well versed in White Forest, or your opponent, or you made the Ilia Severe specifically before 5 summons, which is only really something you do if you specifically want to play around Nip, then it's most likely the case that you would have been nipped before this point. And so popping your nip protection at the end of your combo is probably not actually that bad, because they almost always would have used their nip before you even got to that point, unless you specifically set up the nip protection before 5 summons. And in that case, you are consciously playing around Nibiru, and it wouldn't make sense to pop your Nibiru protection at that point. So this is mostly for the matchups where you're pretty confident that they don't have Nibiru. And so, for example, if they're on board breakers, or if you just play and you cannot play around Nibiru and they don't nip you before you make the Ilia Silvia, it's also pretty likely that they are not on nip, or they have nip something like nip plus effect Vela, and they're just waiting to use it at the end of your combo anyway. And in that case, there's nothing really you can do anyway. In that case, it's actually good to do this, because that actually gives you some end board, even if they do have the Vela plus nip. But anyway, I'm talking a lot about this card, I guess, but that's one of the things. So if your opponent is on board breakers, or if you just don't think they have the Nibiru, then this can just be an extra Omni. And then I also think it can be pretty good under something like Fuvelas, because under Fuvelas you're usually aiming to end on Rigiella and Murcielago, and then Woes and the fusion spell. At least that's how I play under Fuvelas, ideally. So that will only give them 2 draws. And in that case, your Diabell Star doesn't necessarily have anything to search, right? Because you search out the fusion spell with Murcielago, you search out the Woes with your Regiela. Sometimes, I mean, if you only open one card, right, then you'd go Wanted into Diabell Star into Set Deception, and do it that way. But if you open like Wanted or Diabell Star, or the fusion spell, or Woes, or basically if you open more cards, like if you open fusion spell, or Woes, or Deception, or Wanted, or Diabell Star, or as Amina said also, I think you do get the extra surge off of the Bellstar, I feel like. And so it is nice when you're under full bar to use the Diabellstar to get this, and then just end on your Isiela, your Diabellstar, and your Murcielago with this set, with Woe's set, and with the fusion spell set. I guess at least that's my thought, that this could be actually pretty good under Fuvelos or something like that. And I do think it's pretty common to get Fuvelos. And I also feel like this could be pretty decent under something like Drawl. Because if you get Drawled, you don't have a lot to set with your Diabellstar, because setting Deception doesn't really do anything. Deception doesn't really do anything under Drawl. And you could set the fusion spell, of course. But if you are getting drawn pretty early and you're getting hit hard with the draw, it might not be the case that you can use the fusion spell for a lot, right? Because you do need a bunch of monsters on the field for Guardian to make Guardian Chimera. You do need a fusion and a synchro to make Saint Asamina, and yeah, so you could set the fusion spell, but I guess sometimes I'm just not really sure that would actually be helpful. So having just this set as an Omni negate, when you get hard stop with draw, I think could be pretty good, right? I think that could be pretty good. So that's the idea. I think it can help you, and it also makes it so that your Diabellstar is a pretty nice endboard piece if you have this, right? You're not too sad on ending on Diabellstar if you have this card set down. And I will also say that having Diabellstar in your hand or on the field and passing your opponent to your opponent is actually not super bad, because you can of course send her for this. You can use her as a fusion material for Guardian Chimera, and then she will come back and she will add follow-up in the form of a wanted or a deception or something like that. And so having the Diabellstar in rotation and prioritizing having a Diabellstar either in your hand or on the field when passing your turn is not even that bad to begin with if you're in a grindy matchup. And this just sort of just amplifies that. So I do think that in theory this card could be pretty nice. Of course, the massive downside is that it doesn't really do anything if you don't get to the Diabellstar, or if you don't have the Diabellstar in your graveyard or in your hand when you pass the turn, right? Unless you have something like I wanted to add it back. So it can be a pretty big brick if you just open a bunch of white forest card and this, and you get stopped before you can even get to your Diabellstar. However, I will say that just sending this to the graveyard and using its second effect to protect your deception, I do think that's pretty cool as well. Of course, it does sort of assume that you're able to play, so yeah, it does have downsides, and that's why I wouldn't main the card deck this card. Also, it's obviously terrible going second, but just food for thought when going first, I think. And I have been talking about this card for like 15 minutes, so let me just drink some coffee. And then APs, I don't think we need to talk too much about that. It's really good. I played in the side deck. Some people choose to main it. I feel like that in game 1, I want to hedge a bit more in the direction of having non-engine. I feel like game 1, if we start, we should be pretty favored. We should be able to outskill our opponent without the help from this. I know that this will make the game a lot easier to win when you're going first, if you're going uninterrupted. But I don't think it should be necessarily in game 1 to win when you're going first. I do think that game 2 and 3, when you go first, it can be pretty necessary to have some of these powerful trap cards when your opponent is, probably signing in a lot of counters to your deck. And then lastly, the card I'm sort of most unsure about among these three is Scourge. The thing is, I do think that it's a very good card. The problem is that it's only, the Azamina Apes is a Azamina card and a White Forest card, so there's multiple ways to search it. And this Sinful Spoils of Betrayal is obviously a Sinful Spoil spell, which is also the easiest kind of spell to search, or spell trap to search. White Forest spells and traps are probably the hardest to search, maybe on the same level as Amina spell traps, because it's only really Sylvie and Riziella that can search this, and most of the time your Sylvie search will be going towards a Tails in order so that you can extend, and then the Riziella search will go towards a woes most of the time, or if you're in a post sighting, maybe you'll search the Azamina Apes instead. And even though it's strong, I just don't see it coming up that often that you are able to search it. You could maybe search this over woes, but I wouldn't search it over APs if I'm comboing, I think. So it's like it is a bit rough. It can probably come up in, and you might say the same thing about APs, right? But you probably maybe search APs over woes when you know you can play post side decking, and also the case that you could search this with something like Deception if you open the fusion spell, or you can search it with Murcielago if you open something like Wanted and you don't need to search for Wanted with Murcielago. So it's kind of nice. It comes up in these hands where you have a lot of engine, basically. And it helps create a stronger end board, and it's probably also not that bad to draw when you're going first. Both of these, of course, you can send for cost and they will come back. But if you're setting in APs and you're keeping in the woes, I just don't know how often you'll be able to search the Scourge. Of course, maybe it's just nice to just open this, and there is some merit to having, one woes, one APs, one Scourge, so that you never draw any multiples. For example, if these were 3 copies of woes, you just sort of you have a lot of redundancy in the sense that hard drawing any of these is not super bad, because you would maybe not even have the possibility to search the card anyway. Whereas if you play 3 copies of the same card, then hard opening them maybe is not that good, because you would search that card anyway. So, maybe playing this card instead of a second copy of woes does actually have some merit, because that makes any copy of these you hard draw pretty nice, actually. They all add to your end board. Of course, APs and Scourge are a lot more conditional than woes, because for Scourge you have to end on a synchro, and you also want something relevant in the graveyard to summon back, like a relevant illusion in your graveyard to summon back. So, for example, if you end on Diabel, you can tribute to Diabel, summon back to Diabel. But if you only end on Riziella, you kind of want some sort of, maybe, I don't know, you want something in the graveyard that you can summon back. Of course, if you go full combo, you can kind of use this in a nice way, where you can sort of maybe link off the Saint Asmina and have it chill in the graveyard, and then just summon it back during your opponent's turn with Scourge. But if you get, what I'm getting at is if you get stopped pretty early, then Scourge is not really a super great card. To be honest, if even if you get to a level 6 synchro, then this is just still is an Omni, right? But if you don't have anything valuable to bring back, then you are tributing your quote-unquote boss monster, and it might be the only monster you have in order to negate something, and it can be a bit rough in terms of how are you going to follow up on that. But maybe if you get to the Asamina stuff, you can of course summon back, Asmina said, or Mauricio Lago maybe. Not super strong, right? But you can also summon back the Ilya Silvira if you didn't, if you had to link it off for something, right? You say you're trying to make a bow or something, and you need to use the Ilya Silvira. I don't actually really know. You can also make Sate Asamina using Ilya Silvira and then get it back on your opponent's turn with Scourge. It's sort of this. It's like where I can see. It's like these book cards are both kind of mediocre if you only end on one thing. Like if you only end on one synchro, if you don't get to the Asamina stuff, these cards are, not terrible, but at the same time, probably not cards that will win you the game. Like, we have to see this and compare it to something like a skill drain or a deep area or something like that, because we are using side deck space for it, right? So, yeah, I don't know. That was, of course, a 30-minute introduction to what I wanted to do today, which was to test hands against hand trap pairs, and then also keep these sort of in mind while we play, and maybe I will just keep them outside of my deck and then try and search them from outside of my deck if they come up, and we'll see how often they come up, because I do think that of course all of these cards will come up if you go completely uninterrupted, and they are of course amazing if you go completely uninterrupted, but we are not really trying to evaluate a card based on how well it is when you go completely uninterrupted. So I am trying to play against at least 2 hand traps and see if they ever come up. Yeah, and then I also bought sleeves for YCS Birmingham. Of course, I cannot use my current sleeves, these ones, because they are not, official, and they are not, blank sleeves. So I think, well, it does say non-branded, and I don't think that these are branded per se, but and it also says in the tournament policy that they cannot be like shiny, and I do think there's some foiling on these sleeves. Also, it's white for its sleeves, and it will just completely give away my strategy, and I'm not tryharding that hard, but I want to at least, have the chance of of my opponent not knowing what I'm playing. So I did just buy some blank sleeves. These are green. I really like these, this kind of green. I played it with these sleeves in Magic the Gathering, and they're pretty nice. And then I bought some orange one for my extra deck, and the idea was that I really wanted them to be 2 very different colors, so that when I'm shuffling back my cards after a game, I'm not accidentally putting any extra deck cards in my main deck, because I have actually done that a couple of times, and of course at locals it's like whatever, but at a YCS I really don't want to do that. So yeah, and these are also not dual mat. So what I mean by this is Dragon Shield has some sleeves that are, have a color on the back side of the card, and then on the front side of the sleeve they are just black, so you don't have to look at the color of the sleeve when the card is face up. But these are not like that, and I hope that would help me when I'm shuffling back my cards, that if I see sort of an orange outline on the card, it should be very bright. Then I will immediately notice that that's an extra deck monster, and so I will not shuffle it into my main deck. So yeah, just really trying to make sure that I'm keeping my extra deck and main deck apart by using these very bright colors that are very distinct. And yeah, I just wanted to show these off. I think I will be re-sleeving this deck today while I watch YCS Orlando. And then hopefully I'll make a video or two before YCS Birmingham, just to get to shuffle the cards a bit, because new sleeves always make the cards very slippery, right? Anyway, I think that's all before our testing can begin. So I'm just gonna use the bathroom real quick. I'm gonna pause the video and come back. All right, I'm back. Let me put these sleeves away. And let's shuffle up the deck and draw a test hand. So yeah, I will say locals for me yesterday did not go fantastic. I won 3 and lost 2. One of my losses was against Mr. Rugi, and I did a crazy misplay. Basically, she activated Deer and grabbed Maximus and activated Maximus, and I sent my Rigella to the graveyard with the effect of Maximus, and then she just bestialed my Rigella. And that just completely ruined it on my turn, where I had the chance to go into Rigella, and that would start all my plays and probably win me the game because she was out of interruptions. But my Rigella was banished because I was a dingus and sent it to the graveyard with Maximus. Should have picked any other card in my extra deck to send to the graveyard. And that was really stupid. And it was in game 3. And I'm pretty convinced that I would have won that game if I did not do that misplay. But I guess that it's good that I did it now, so I hopefully will not do that at the YCS. But still pretty silly. I felt pretty silly. And then the other loss I had was against Malice, and it was game 3. And I actually drew for the loss and stopped my opponent, but... And you know, they won the dice roll, but they just had a ton of non-engine to stop me on my turn. And I did not really open a ton of engine to play, and they had enough to stop me. And yeah, they just beat me on their turn. They had like, you know, I think I did play it a bit wrong, but it was still pretty rough. I think my opponent played it well, and it was a good match, but I ended up losing game 3. You know, sometimes Malice can just be pretty hard to deal with. Let's just say that. Anyway, let's see here. We are drawing an Elset, a Fulas, a Tails, a Sylvie, and a Drawlin Lockbird. Okay. And let me put my deck over here. And let's see what hand traps we will be going up against. We will be going up against a Fulas and an Effect Failure. Okay. So let's just say they probably just start up using the Fulas in the draw step, right? Just to not get punished by talents. And I do feel that our line on the Fubulas is pretty good. I'll see if I can showcase it here, or at least I have this idea of a line. I have done it a couple of times, but let me see if I can actually do it properly. And of course they do have a Veiler here, and so they will probably use it on our Sylvie, but we luckily have the tails to follow up, so it doesn't really matter. So we just go Sylvie here, and they will Veiler it. And then we just go Elset, send the tails to the graveyard, summon out here. And here we can of course grab, we have both the Elset search and the tail search. It it doesn't really make sense to grab Estella under Fullers. So let's just go for this line here and grab as Mina said, and then set this card here back. Now we don't really have any more spells and traps, so I think I will just use this Tails as a material for Richella. Yeah. And I do think I want to try to get to Chain Block with this, or just get to my Asmine stuff as early as possible. So I'll just summon this Asmina LZ and Synchro Summon here. Where's my extra deck? Oh. So yeah, don't mind this Ron sleeve. I think it's pretty hilarious. I actually just found it on a table once. Probably cannot bring this to Birmingham either. But here's our extra deck, and we will go into a Richella, and I should not make it in that zone. Should make it like here. And then we have an LZ, as Mina said, Chainlink 1, and a Richella, Chainlink 2, sending this Tails. And then here we are pretty much just grabbing out the woes, and then post side here we might grab out the APs, but honestly the woes is not too bad in this situation. And then of course with our, as Mina said, we are grabbing our out our deception, I think. I'm pretty sure. Maybe it. Actually, let me think a bit on that, because my plan in this here, right? I can just say my plan is to have the fusion spell and Mauricio Lago, and then on our opponent's turn we make Saint Asmina and we summon out the Omni Negate or Ilia Sylvia with Saint Asmina. And you know, you could also just make Ilia Sylvia instead of Mauricio Lago, but then you would lose access to what would you even lose access to in that scenario? Well, you'd go if you went for that route, you'd go Wanted here, you'd summon out the Witch, then Witch would set Deception, and you'd go Deception, summon out, add Hallowed, summon out Ilia Sylvia. Yeah, then you wouldn't get to this fusion spell. But if you go for Mauricio Lago, you will still get to the fusion spell. And you can also just still get to Ilia Sylvia just on your opponent's turn. So that's why I like this line a little better. Now, in terms of our simple spells of betrayal, this was a point I was bringing up when I talked about that card. And I did say that it would be nice again when you get Full Lust. And so I wonder if there's any way to search the I wonder if there's any way to search the fusion spell and also search the Sinful Spells of Betrayal trap. And I must admit I don't currently see it. I do not currently see it. But I'm pretty sure that we should be good either way if we just start with a Deception. If we add a Wanted here, then we would have to just set a Deception with the Witch, and that would let us get a draw a bit earlier. So maybe you could say that going for the Wanted is first is a bit better. However, the Wanted, the Witch is of course, so if you go for Deception here, you get to the Asmina engine, and if your Mauricio Lago gets Impermed or Vela, then that would stop right there. if you go for the wanted here, then you do get your Diabell star on the field. But if she gets Impertinent Veiler, then that would also stop right there. I guess the difference is that if Diabell star gets Veilered, you didn't give them an extra draw of a Fuvelas. And since we are not planning on adding back the Hallowed and Fusion Summoning again anyway, it doesn't really make sense to, you know, the usual line is get Deception, get Hallowed, summon with your Lago, add Wanted, add back the Hallowed, and then chain the, activate the Hallowed, chain the Wanted in order to Fusion Summon again. But since we're not planning on Fusion Summoning twice this turn anyway, maybe it does not actually make sense to do it this way. Maybe the Wanted makes a lot more sense in this case. Yeah, I actually do like the idea of just grabbing Wanted here. Of course, we could also have yeah, I don't really see too many other things we could have added here. Of course, the Susurrus, which is a card I didn't talk about, but we could summon back. No, the Susurrus would not really make a lot of sense. So let's just say we add Wanted here. I think the Fusion spell here could also be decent because we do sit with these 2 cards in hand, so we could sort of just add the Fusion spell here, and then we know we can make Guardian Chimera. But I do think that the Saint Asmina into Ilias Elvira is stronger than the Guardian Chimera, and also think that the whole thing becomes a lot stronger if they if we have the diffusion spells. We can also just, what I'm trying to say, sorry, is that we can also just go Wanted for Diabell Star and set the fusion spell, or even the trap card, I guess, and that would be just better, because then we have Diabell Star. So anyway, let's say we add the Wanted, we go Wanted Search, try to get the Diabell Star. And then here we can just probably in this scenario we can probably just go Diabell Star, sending the Fuvelas, and yeah, well, yeah, it should be fine. And summoning out the Diabell Star, and then Diabell Star here, and then we could set the fusion spell, and that would end on basically fusion spell woes. But that would not give them a draw, and then we would be able to use the fusion spell to make a Guardian Chimera with probably with the Diabell Star. All right, I forgot that we are not really going into Diabell right here. At least not in my original plan. So let's see, if we set the fusion spell now, we have woes plus fusion spell, and then we can make a Guardian Chimera on our opponent's turn, and we also have the woes, and that is pretty strong. But if we go for the deception line and we give them a draw and end on the Richella, then we have sort of the deception, and then we do get an extra draw off of Wanted, which we don't right now, and we do also have the Asmina stuff in rotation. We have an extra boss monster in the sense of Saint Asmina, and we also get the Omni Negate, which we would not get, and that is of course instead of Guardian Chimera. But I do feel that the Omni is stronger. Like Omni plus Saint Asmina, I think is stronger than a Guardian Chimera. Of course, I'm not entirely sure on that. But we do give them a draw if we go for the Regiela here. And so maybe giving them a draw is not worth it to. Maybe we just search the fusion spell here and we end on woes plus fusion spell. And then that should be, a good number of interruptions. I guess. However, I do feel that maybe I just want to make Saint Asmina. Could also, of course, just set the trap card here and let that be it. And then we do have an Omni along with Woes. So that should be pretty decent, right? The only thing I'm seeing here actually is that we don't really have anything to... maybe this is actually correct. Maybe this is actually correct. You could also set the trap, of course, here. And then, have an Omni Negate plus Woes. So that would be a Book of Eclipse. From this, we use Woes, summon out, get into the Abel. Yeah. Like in this situation, we have an Omni with the Abel Star, we have the Woes here, and it will give us a bunch of follow-up if we do it like this. Yeah, of course, if we do it like this, we just have an Omni and the Woes. If we do it like this, we have the Woes and a Guardian Chimera. But if we were not to do that, I guess I'll just show it. Then we would have to give them one draw, and that would be by, of course, setting Deception and then tributing this LZ and getting the Hallowed, and then just using Hallowed here to summon out the Murcielago. So that would give them, they would be on 2 draws here. And then we'd search out the fusion spell. And then we'd be in this situation. And the line here is that we go activate Woes, summon out, as Amina said, go into Diabel, probably in that draw phase. And we'd get the Woes back to our hand with Diabel. And we'd add a Sinful spell or trap card, like maybe a Wanted or something like that. And then we'd go at some point use, preferably after we've used the Diabel to summon the book, we'd go Sinful Spells of Wild Forest, use these 2, and then summon out Saint Asmina, and then go Saint Asmina, summon out the Ilia Silvia Omni Negate. And I think that line is stronger because you do get the Saint as a mina on the field, but you do give them an extra draw. So that is also something to be mindful about, I guess. Maybe it is, but you also get an extra draw, right? So we do get an extra draw with the deception, with the wanted, but I maybe we don't have too many draws here that would benefit us, because extenders doesn't really do anything. We had to draw like non-ingen, and maybe yeah, let's just see what we would have drawn, I guess. We would have drawn an instant fusion. Yeah, not useful. So in game 1, maybe this is fine, although we could also just say end on this. We could also just say end on this, and like this, and basically, yeah, the issue here is that in terms of the fusion spell, is that we do have 2 monsters on the field, and we have 1 in hand, but we'd rather not use this drawn lockbird in our hand. We'll probably like to use it as a hand trap, and so summoning Guardian Chimera in this situation is maybe not ideal. Also, of course, LZ can come back when we summon a spellcaster tuner during our opponent's turn, but that is only if she's in the graveyard. She can come back to the hand, and on this end board she's not on the graveyard. Of course, we could have just sent her to the graveyard instead of the Abel star, and so if we are in this situation, it would actually be fine, right? Because we just use the woes first, and then we can use the Sylvie in the graveyard, shuffle back to Risiella to summon her out, and then we have, LZ, these 3 here to summon out the Guardian Chimera. That, of course, does cut us off a lot of follow-up, because yeah, we'll probably just use the fusion demo Fovelas in our hand at that point as fusion material, just so we have the LZ for that turn. Yeah, interesting. And then post side, then maybe just going for this right here is actually pretty nice, maybe even nicer than the fusion spell, because you don't give them a draw, so at that point they're just at 1 draw, and this is still decent, right? It's still an Diabel plus an Omni-Negate. Yeah. I don't know. I do think as Saint Asamina is a nice endboard piece. I do think it can stop a bunch of decks, but at the same time, yeah, I do think that. But at the same time, you do also need to sequence it in the correct order. Right, you need to sort of use the Diabel first to summon something, and then fusion summon with that to make it. You do get an extra draw, but so does the opponent, so that's not really, doesn't really make too much a difference, and the draw will probably benefit your opponent a lot more. So maybe this is the best end board against in this situation here. Although it's not too powerful, right? It would be nice if we could do this. Yeah, but I don't think we can. Really. Yeah, I don't think we can. I have a hard time actually knowing which one is the correct option. Giving them 2 draws should not be the end of the world. At the same time, you know, the less draw they have, the better the omni-negate will be. I don't actually know. I think being in this situation, the Guardian Chimera should be pretty good in most matchups, honestly. Should be fine enough. Like, maybe there's no need to go for the Saint Asamina line, to be honest. But I guess in this situation here, you don't have an omni-negate. Yeah, in this situation here, you do not have an omni-negate, and you also don't get the draw. So maybe in this situation, I would give them an extra draw. And have the Samina Elsat. It's very, very, very tough to say, actually. I don't actually know which one is correct. Maybe we should just move on, because I think I've just spent half an hour talking about this one thing. But it is pretty interesting, and I guess it's just my own videos, so I can decide. I guess the Murcielago does not add like the Saint Asamina. How powerful is the Saint Asamina? That's the question, right? Is it powerful enough that we would give our opponent an extra draw in exchange for a Saint Asamina? Maybe. Maybe. I will also say that having the, you know, Asamina cards in rotation, and, you know, having the Hallowed, and basically having the Hallowed in the graveyard, because you do get to search a Sinful Spoils trap card, or spell a trap with Asamina set when you use Woes during your opponent's turn. When it gets back to you, you can just immediately start out with making a Stamina monster, right? I think so, at least. Yeah. So maybe the follow-up is a lot better if you go through. And you will also get a draw of Wanted. And, you know, when you are playing Fuvulas, against Fuvulas, you are just trying to get an extra turn, right? So, I don't know. Interesting conundrum. The trap did seem pretty strong in that scenario. You know, just ending on an Omni and a Diabell Star. That did seem pretty good, honestly. I feel like maybe whether or not you go for the Saint Asamina is matchup dependent. So maybe you'd not go for it in game 1, but maybe in game 2, if you know your opponent is something like Tenpai or something like that, then you would go for it. I guess it also depends on how much non-Intune you have in your hand. I don't actually know. It's very, very interesting. the Guardian Chimera should be pretty strong, honestly. And, you know, it's comparably strong to the Saint Asamina just in terms of stopping your opponent. I don't know. Oh, I forgot to shuffle these two in. Also, maybe post-siding, getting an extra draw is pretty nice because you maybe have a bunch of cards you want to see, like Frost and something like that. I don't know, actually. However, let's just try another combination because that took a ton of time. Let's see what we will get matched up against. It's a draw and it's a Nibiru. Okay. That is pretty rough. Let's see what we draw. We draw a Mulchamifulas, a Thrust, an Asamina, LZ, and LZ, and a Woes. And I'll be right back. I'm going to the bathroom again. Alright, I am back. So, let me just have some coffee. So we are playing against Droll and Nibiru. And of course, in principle, we don't know this, but we will and should probably always lead off with the Wanted in the draw phase, just so that we don't get drolled on this. And then here in this situation, what do we lead with? Now, I will be honest. In this situation here, I'm not too keen on using the triple tactics first to send off LZ, actually. I would probably like to bait out a hand trap before, because then the thrust just becomes a Woes or a Tails, and then you can send it to graveyard, have it come back, and just helps your economy a lot more. So don't think I would start out with LZ send thrust. However, I would probably like to start out with the Witch, because we have a nice target we have a nice Fullers here that we can just send. And see if it resolves. And what would we be setting with this if it resolves? Let's be real, we will probably be setting... we would probably be setting the Deception, right? Because... yeah. We could also set the Fusion spell, honestly, because like, even if we don't know we're against draw, because then we can send the Fusion spell for cost for LZ, and then, you know, get value in that sense. And also, since we do have the Asamina set, we do know that we probably can get to the Deception anyway later. However, if we get the Fusion spell here and we send it for cost with LZ, then of course we will get drawled when LZ has resolved, and that will not really lead us anywhere then. No, it will not really lead us anywhere. Of course, if we add Deception and we go Deception, Tribute, and add Hallowed, then we get drawled on the Hallowed ad, and then we can make like an Omni Negate, I guess, because it doesn't make sense to add Risiella here, because she doesn't really do anything on the draw. And we also cannot really use our set. We can't use our set effect anymore. So that is also a bit rough. Let's not beat around the bush here. So maybe instead of specifically against roll, I think we should prioritize our first search and our only search being the LZ. Because if we get stopped after the LZ, well then at least we do have a level 4 tuner. And so we can just synchro into something. We cannot do anything with Rushiela, but if we have thrust and setting woes, then we do actually have a pretty decent end board. And also, even though we cannot search with Asmina's set, we can still use her to fusion summon, right? So maybe that will come up. I don't actually know. But yeah, so in this scenario, I do think setting the fusion spell here is actually pretty nice. Even if you don't know that you will get drawled here, you do have the Asamina set as another way to get to your stuff. And if you sort of do the whole deception thing, I guess if you do the whole deception thing and you just tribute the Diabel Star and you summon the Murishilago, you just add the fusion spell right there, then you'd be in the same situation. But better, right? But more better off. So maybe that's what I would actually do in a game. Yeah, maybe that is what I would honest to God do. Maybe I'm just thinking of setting the fusion spell because I know right here my opponent has draw. But if we do the whole hallowed line, then we cannot really. We have the Omni, and then we have tracked to set woes. And then we can like summon out there's Mina set and do nothing really with it at all. We can fusion summon into, yeah, it doesn't make sense really. It is definitely the losing line here to go deception, set deception, activate deception, and add hallowed, because then you get drawled on hallowed. We cannot use our ill set anymore. But that is probably what I would do, right? Because setting this fusion spell here seems kind of unnatural, in the sense that, well, maybe it's not unnatural when we have this, right? Because normally you'd want to get to the Asamina stuff as soon as possible, and I still think that would be the case, right? But maybe given our hand, we want to have some resources for this to send to the graveyard. When we know we can get to this, to our Asamina stuff anyway, because we have this, and we don't want to send this to the graveyard in case that they do have a hand trap for our stuff. And so maybe it is better to just go set the fusion spell here. In principle, if we can play, we should be able to get to the deception anyway with our Samina set. And if we can't play, if we get hard stopped, then it's a lot better to have the fusion spell set. So if we set the fusion spell here, and we go Samina set, send it to the graveyard, and we just go add Sylvie in this situation here, then we will get drawled, and this one will come back. And so now we are in this situation where we can say, okay, summon out the Sylvie, and Yeah, summon out the Sylvie, and we can just go into a synchro play here and just go for a like a Sylvera or something like that. We obviously can't search anything with Richella, so maybe it doesn't make too much sense to go into that. We can of course just go into a Diabell here, right? Yeah. We don't get a search of our Zamina set, obviously. But we do still yeah, and then we could also go make this and then go fusion summon into the Omni. Maybe that is not terrible. That would be our 5th summon. So we go fusion summon these two to make the Omni negate. We go activate this. Well, this is probably setting woes either way, right? So let's just do that. Like, this is most definitely setting woes. Another reason why I like woes much more than APs in the main deck. So we have these two here. And then we can go Richella, pass, or Sylvie, Severa, pass, and then we can make our Diabell on our opponent's turn. We can go make Sylvie Silvera and then go summon out Elset and make a Diabell. And then we could add back something like the Wanted. And that would be pretty nice. Not gonna lie, that would be pretty nice. The obvious problem with that is that we go 1, 2, 3, we make the Rigella, we summon this as our 5th summon, and then they just nip us, right? So the correct thing to do here is to go summon the Elset as our 5th summon, and then go, and then just go fusion summon here into an Ilia Sylvia. Right, that would be the correct play. That is our 5th summon, and that's an Omni negate. Would I have done that? Honestly, I probably would have went for the Diabell. Not gonna lie. And that would have been a mistake. Because the woes is still, like, even though you make Diabell and you get an add back of the Wanted doesn't do too much. And the Diabell is still just a Book of Eclipse, right? And I guess you have an extra Book of Eclipse in that situation because you have both the woes and the Diabell, so you can make book twice, and that is really powerful. Of course, maybe 1 book plus 1 Omni is better than 2 books. I think that's probably true. That is probably true, honestly. So I do think that this is the better play, even if your opponent does not have Nibiru. I think an Omni plus a book is better than 2 Book of Eclipse. Yeah, that sounds correct to me. But would I have done this in an actual game? Probably not, because I am not good at playing around Nibiru, and I often forget that it's a thing. Would I have set the fusion spell with a Diabell star? It's good of me to practice against these kind of hands, because I think something like Droll and Nibiru are cards that I often don't play around, but I think that this was setting the fusion spell here is a really heads up play when we had the hand we had, because we could get to that Amina stuff anyway if we don't get Drolled. But if we do get Drolled, then this is a lot better, right? So I think that this was the correct line to take against these 2 hand traps. However, and of course, post-siding, you could have said this card instead. I guess, with Divasta. However, I think the fusion spell is probably, like, Guardian Chimera Pop 2 is probably a little better than the Omni in this situation. Yeah, I do think so. Also, just again, the Scourge and the Apes would have been way worse than Woes in this situation, obviously. So yeah. All right, let's see here. Okay, very interesting. Maybe I should play against a bit more of just Droll and Nibiru, to be honest. Maybe I'm too bad at respecting those cards. But let's just see what we get from the random. Yeah, I do think that was a very valuable experience right there. I don't think I would have went for that line in practice, I'm gonna be honest. I probably would have tried to make the Diabell, but in that scenario it's definitely more correct to make the Ilias Sylvira, right? Just fusion summon it as your 5th summon. Yeah, I think most definitely that would have been a more correct way to play. And of course they would maybe just have used the Nibiru, and then we would be forced to tribute our Ilias Sylvira at that point. You know, so it's still traded 1-for-1 with the Nibiru, but at least then we have some stuff on the field for Woes, and for our fusion spell. It's pretty important to have monsters on the field when you have Woes and fusion spell set, right? So yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's shuffle up and see what hand traps we get. We get a Fullers and an Ash Blossom. Alright. Alright, so back to the Fullers stuff. We draw Deception, Instant Fusion, Wanted, and else set. Okay, so they will probably just go draw phase, Fullers here. And of course, I guess the Instant Fusion is kind of terrible here. But we can always just send it for cost for the else set here. Obviously, we have just been talking about draw. In the case where they draw us, we would like to resolve the deception before we resolve the else set here. So what we should do is that, would we want that? If we go else set as a first thing, we get Sylvie and then we get draw, so we can't get to Woes. And then what does the Sylvie and what does the Sylvie even do? Like, we can do a synchro play, but doesn't really make any sense when we don't have Woes. If we get, yeah. Of course, if we get trolled after Deception, then that also really doesn't do anything. Well, we can still make an Omni negate, right? So maybe it is better to lead with the Deception here in this scenario where we wouldn't get access to Woes anyway. Yeah, but I guess we're not against draw right now. It's just hard to keep all hand traps in mind, right? Because we technically shouldn't really know what our opponent has. So it's tough to say what we should lead on with. but so if we lead with deception, we get to hallowed. We do get to go into our Asamina line. However, our instant fusion is not really usable against the Fuvulas, and just summoning a bunch of extra deck monsters is also not really good against the Fuvulas. So maybe what we want to do is that... Oh, it's really hard to say, right? Because if we start with this, Deception, Tribute Fuvulas, and then that getting ashed, then we go Elset here, and we do get to search our woes and also the fusion spell. However, against Drawl, if we start with this, then we will get Drawled after this, and we'd have the Omni and the fusion spell, and that's a lot worse. That is a lot worse. So it feels like... does feel like... I guess the discerning factor here is Fuvulas, because we are under Fuvulas, and that makes the Asamina line lose a lot of value, because the Asamina line under Fuvulas is basically just, if you can't do anything else, it's basically just make Ilya Sylvia pass. So that whole thing is just not super strong when we're under Fuvulas. What we want to do under Fuvulas is search a bunch of spells and traps that we can set. So that makes us think that this one is the higher priority start. Of course, this will get a lot more punished if they then draw us as well. If they draw us after this, then we can basically not really do anything other than use Wanted in response to draw, and then go like set a fusion spell. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But maybe that... But if we get drawled after this, then we just have... Yeah, basically just the same. We just have an Omni, I guess, and we have the Wanted. We have the Balsa set fusion spell as well. I think in this situation, what I want to have resolve... I think again, I guess the question is: do they have draw? Do they have Ash? Right? If they have Ash Blossom, then we want to bait out this first. If they have draw, we want to maybe still lead with this, because then we at least can make an Omni. Whereas if we get drawled after this, it doesn't really do anything at all, actually. Yeah, because we cannot add woes or anything like that. Whereas if this gets drawled, we at least have an Omni. But then at the same time, we do give them a fusion or a draw of the Fuvulas. It's hard to say. It is really hard to say. I think I'm just gonna try to metagame a bit. No, they have Ash, so I'm gonna lead with this. Tribute the Mulchami, and they will probably Ash this. I mean, they could also just let it resolve. But then we just make the Omni, I feel like. Yeah. Then we'd make the Omni if this resolves. And because we can search out the woes and the fusion spell with the L set. And we don't mind giving them a card for an Omni. And then this card here, this can search out, can set like I don't know even. Like that would be a nice case for this one right here. But let's just say that they ashed this. Yeah, so they use their ash in this. And we go, okay, I'll send this instant fusion, summon out this, and we grab our Sylvie, and then we just go Sylvie plus set to make the Rigella, and they will get a draw, and we go send this send this deception to the graveyard. Oh, I forgot to search for Sylvie. I was like, I'm missing something. Yeah, we go add the woes off of Sylvie, and then we go send the woes for cost here, and go add like probably just the fusion spell. Yeah, just the fusion spell here. And we have woes, and then we go wanted here, and we get our Diabell Star. It might not seem that the Diabell Star is adding too much to the end board, but I do think that she is actually adding a bunch to the end board here, because we just go send the deception, summon out the witch. And we probably go set like that. This scenario would be really nice to have the Sinful Spoils of Betrayal, right? Right here, I don't think there's anything we can really search that makes too much sense other than a wanted. Which is not the worst thing in the world, because now we go set the wanted, right? And we go use I want it in the graveyard and get a card draw. Okay, we actually drew the Hello. That's funny. I guess in this situation we'd make a Omni, right? But let's just say we didn't draw that. And so we have these three. And so here we start off with the words in the draw phase. We make Diabell. We search a Sinful Spoils spell with the Asmina set we used as material. We add back the woes with the Diabell, and or we can actually search any Sinful Spoils card. So here in this situation, the Queen of Asmina is pretty nice, obviously, but it's a pretty big brick, right? And then we go Sylvie, summon back by shuffling back the Rigella. That will trigger the LZ to come back. And now we have two monsters on the field, one in our hand. And we can use those for Guardian Chimera. Then we can summon back the Diabell Star again and set a Deception probably. And we can send like the card we drew to summon her back, or we can send the wanted, and then when it comes back to us our turn, assuming it comes back, we immediately have a wanted draw in addition to our normal draw. And yeah, I do think that is like, that's what I mean with the line under Fuvelos, and that's where I'm thinking that Silvera could be pretty strong actually as a side deck card. Yeah, of course you could also just say, oh well, we searched the apes with Rigella, and then we set the fusion spell. And this is also like, this could also be pretty decent, right? Because if you go into woes and you make a Rigella, and then you have Diabell, then this will be a compulsory for 2. And if you use the Diabell first and you summon out did the Book of Eclipse, then this becomes a compulsor for 3. So that's pretty. That's also pretty nice. To be honest, compulsory for 3 versus an Omni. I guess it depends on a lot what deck you're against, right? If you're against Mitsurugi, for example, you probably want the Omni more against the fusion spell. And if you're against something like Malice, yeah, against something like Malice, you'd probably want the bounce more. So I maybe it's matchup dependent, but maybe this card in this situation, yeah, maybe it would be better just to say search apes and then search the fusion spell here. You could of course also just search apes and then set the Silvera as well, and then you would lose access to the Guardian Chimera. So I don't know how. I don't know how big of a fan I am of losing access to the Guardian Chimera. But that is definitely also an option. So I guess it's really matchup dependent. However, in game 1, then this will probably be good enough. Alright, let's try another hand. So that's what I mean by the... that's what I mean when I say that I think White Forest plays pretty decently into Fuvelas, and the reason for that is all these spells and traps that we can search. Yeah, maybe the apes would be better than the Omni Negate in this scenario. I could definitely see that being the case. But it is also, you know, a lot weaker if they go something like, okay, activate Ultimate Slayer. Like, yeah, if they go activate Ultimate Slayer on the Diabella and just shuffle her back, then you only have the Richiella in the graveyard. Of course, maybe you should wait with activating the Woes until they activate the Ultimate Slayer, because you can just respond with Woes and then just dodge the Ultimate Slayer. That's a pretty neat technology, actually. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's see what we get up against. We get up against a Nibiru and an Ash. Okay. And let's give it one last shuffle here. What do we draw? Fuvelas, Elset, Wanted, and Sylvie. Well, I guess we kind of drew the Nibiru out here, because we do just go to our main phase here, and we do just start with the Hello Dasmina, and we go activate the Wanted. Now the interesting thing is that like if we do, they probably will not Ash this. At least I don't feel like they will, because basically I think they will try to bait out our Omni with the Ash Blossom here. So, and we just summon out. And we actually don't have to summon out the Omni immediately. We can do something like summon out the Mauricio Lago here. And then go Mauricio Lago, search out. And then will they Ash this? Maybe, because they basically see it that they want to, I guess, now that we haven't made the Omni, they want to keep us off a Sinful Spoils spell trap card, because that means we can make the Omni. So maybe they will go Ash on this card. It's so hard to predict what your opponent is going to do. Maybe they would have to Ash the Diabell Star. or the wanted, I guess, because now we can get to our second sinful spell with the Diabell Star. But we should definitely try in this situation to get to our sorry, we should try to get to our Ilia Severe before 5 summons here. Definitely, right? And how do we plan on doing that if we don't summon out the Hallowed, the Ilia Severe here? Well, what are we even searching with Murcielago? Because we kind of have it all. Like, we have the Elset and the Sylvie. So I don't really see what we need to search here with Murcielago. Because we do have our simple spells search with this card. And so we could always get to the Murcielago later. Of course, the question is here, do we want to make Saint Asmina? Because if we want to make Saint Asmina, we really want this to stay on the field. But if this stays on the field, the Saint Asmina line without Muddy Mud Dragon is a bit weak to Nibiru, because we want to have the L set. We want to have the L set on the field, or we want to have the L set in order to fusion summon. Yeah, so maybe it makes a lot more sense to make Murcielago later rather than now. Yeah, because we did hard open the Asmina El set. Yeah. Because I don't really know what we would be searching of the Murcielago, to be honest. Like, we could search Deception, that doesn't really do too much because we already have our Hallowed Asmina. We could search out the fusion spell, but we could also search out the fusion spell with Diabell Star and else Asmina set in our hand. We already went through the Wanted, so that's not really too relevant anyway. We can add another copy of Asmina set, but that doesn't really also accomplish a lot. Yeah, so I do think that here we just start out with the Ilia Silvera here. That does make a lot more sense, I feel like. But then I guess the interesting part begins where we go normal summon Sylvie, and they can go, okay, activate Ash Blossom on that. And I feel like they should telegraph to us that they have Nibiru. Like, if they Ash Blossom the Sylvie, they're trying to bait us to use the Omnigate. This should be obvious to us in the game. I don't know if I will catch this in the game, but right here, it's pretty obvious that if they just throw this Ash Blossom away, it's probably not their only hand trap, and it's a high likelihood that they are trying to get our Omni off the field. So we should just let this go and have the Sylvie be negated. Then, of course, we do need to have a spell or trap on the field for our Rushiela summon, so we should just send this Black Witch, and then we should probably just set the fusion spell, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what we would gain from setting the Deception. So here we just set the fusion spell, and then we go summon out the Asmina set, and we go Sylvie plus Asmina set here to make Richiella, and we go Richiella, send the fusion spell for cast, and we go chainlink 1 as a null set, and we go chainlink 2 What do we even search for Richiella? Maybe we do search the L set actually. Because we do kind of need a way to get to Diabel here. So searching wanted in this case will stop our plays. And yeah, searching wanted here will definitely just stop our plays. So maybe we're not too interested in that. And what are we searching in terms of sinful spells cards? That is also a good question. Like, we are probably searching LZ. And do we just search a deception maybe? That could maybe be the case actually. Because what we can do now, what we can do now is we can have the sinful spells of the White Forest set itself back, and then we can go hallowed here to shuffle her back and add back the hallowed Asmina. And now we can go activate deception and we can go activate hallowed. So we can make Murecielago here, and she can add an extra sinful spell. Then we can add back the hallowed with I do feel like this is our chance to make Saint Asmina in this position. Yeah, I do feel this is the way we make Saint Asmina. And also, maybe we should have searched the woes here actually. Because, well, yeah, let's try to make Saint Asmina in this position. And I'll summon her up here for now, but I guess my next question is, can we also reach a bow? Because we make Saint Asmina here. And what we can do is we can say, okay, Saint Asmina, summon out a Asmina set from the deck and go into Diabel. Then we can say Diabel, add back the sinful spells of the White Forest. And then we can end on that. And then we could have searched the woes instead. Of course, we still have not really went into the Richiella. But I don't know if the Richiella really adds too much here in this position. If we are pre-siding, I guess post-siding, then we could get to the Asmina Apes by making the Richiella. Yeah. It's also the case that we don't really have any spell and trap for this LZ at the moment. So maybe we made the Saint Asmina prematurely. we do get our wanted draw right here. And what we can do is we can shuffle back. We can shuffle back the fusion spell, and then hope to draw a spell trap to send for LZ. And then we are sort of off to the races, because then we can use Saint Asmina to summon out. We can use Saint Asmina to summon out the Asmina set, and we can use. We can then say Asmina set fusion summon in order to make the Murcielago. Then we can become Murcielago, add back the fusion spell. But what does that really achieve? I don't necessarily think that will achieve too much. Yeah, maybe making the Saint Asmina in this position was not correct. Maybe what we should have done is, okay, let me put back here the Saint Asmina. Let's say we have the fusion spell set here, we have the deception activated here. Maybe what we should do is we should send this to the graveyard to summon out this. Then in this situation we go add the Asmina set again. Then we go activate Hallow to fusions. Oh no, wait. Then we go wanted banish, targeting this, and just give it a shuffle. And draw a card, and then put this on the bottom of the deck. And then we go activate Hallowed here in order to summon out the Murcielago. And then we use Murcielago here to search out the fusion spell. Yeah. Because then we can just go activate the fusion spell here to summon out the LZ. And then we go these two here into a Diabell, and we add back the fusion spell. And then we go, as Mina said here, to fusion with these two into a Saint Asmina. Yeah. Then we go just use these two, I guess. Or maybe just use, then we just say Sylvie effect here. Shuffle this back. And then go these two into a Crush Sheep. And then we can go yeah. Although in this position we did use the Sinful Spoils secondary effect here. So I guess right now we are just trying to make an Abao, so we can go Saint Asmina here, summon out the Morgana, and that would trigger the Abao, summoning something like this back. And then we just go these two here into the Nightmare Unicorn. These two here into a bow, and then here we can go yeah, if we haven't used this effect, what we could do is summon back the Ricciolago, discard this for cost, have it trigger to add back, then chain the Morgina in response to that in order to pop this, and we could search out for example, a wanted or something like that. In this situation though, I don't know if we have any clear way of triggering a Asamina or Sinful Spoils effect. I don't think we do. But maybe that's not the worst case, because we have already used the wanted. So we have not used the deception, but I don't see how we could get to the deception. So we just use here, we should just use the Morgina, I guess, to summon back out the Diabel. And then I guess we just let that be it and not use the Abawa Coup. It is pretty free with the Fuvelas here. We could summon back the Muricielago, but then we don't have any space left, actually. So I guess this just here becomes the end board. And then in the end step, this deception will set itself back. Which, I mean, this is still pretty okay, right? Yeah, we could have ended on the yeah, it is a bit tough with the space limitations here. It is a bit tough with the space limitations. We could definitely have used this as a material to make a bow, and then not have used the Sylvie to summon back, and then we would just have had the Richella in the graveyard. And that's pretty good against Mitsurugi, because she's she protects our Diabel from destruction effects. We do have pretty limited space here, but we can, free up some space by using the fusion spell, and that's pretty nice. In this case, we could maybe start off with the book, summon out the book, add back the L-set, and then use book and L-set, and maybe like the Saint Asmina if it's not useful, to make a Guardian Chimera, pop some cards. Yeah. I do think that this line was the best, given the cards we had. We could at some point have searched a Woes instead of the L-set, but then we would not have then we would not been able to go for the Saint Asmina, and we would not have been able to go to the Abao as well. And I do think that this is, of course, they do clog the board, and I do give them flag for that, but they are still pretty strong interruptions, right? So yeah, I think this was pretty pretty alright. I think, what was our starting hand? Our starting hand was pretty good. Like, it was wanted here, and then I think also LZ. No, maybe we searched out. No, it was this. Yeah, it was these cards. I mean, this was a strong hand, right? This is a pretty powerful hand, and this should be able to beat an Ash plus Nibiru, which we did, of course. And that's really why I like having 3 of these, because it's actually just nice to open. But anyway, do you think that maybe I should stop now? It is really fun, but the video has gone on for 2 hours, so I don't feel like we got to even practice that many test hands against hand traps. But I mean, I'm also being very like analytical and sort of thinking of the different possibilities we could take, and that obviously makes the whole thing a lot longer because I'm trying to learn from this instead of just doing something. I'm trying to figure out what's the optimal thing to do, but yeah, the Ash Blossom versus Drawl dilemma, you know, what to play when you don't know whether your opponent has Ash or Drawl, is definitely pretty interesting. But yeah, I think I will just end the video here and maybe make a part 2 or something like that. So yeah, thanks for watching.